Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Pink and Towers. And welcome back to another preview show. Friday, that means Norwich City are in action tomorrow. As you can see from our faces, the excitement is off the charts. A long trip to Swansea awaits us. We're doing the majority of that later today, ahead of obviously tomorrow's game, 3 o'clock kickoff. I'm sure there will be loads of Norwich fans making that trip down, hoping for anything to cling on to. And we'll be previewing that game. Connor Southwell, joined by Paddy Davitt. We, of course, over the next hour or so, want your comments, your questions. We will get as many of them up on the screen as possible, as we can do here with Joe's. He says, hey, everyone. So hey to you, Joe. And he's also added that he feels very nervous for this game again. And yeah, we will get into so much of that and where Norwich City are at. Paddy, how are you?
Not bad, Connor. We've had a nice fish and chip dinner in our canteen, lunch.
Could be the highlight of the weekend.
Let's hope not, Connor. Let's hope not. But certainly it will set us on our way. Although you're not a big fan of fish, as we've discovered. So, but 5-6 hours ahead, drive down to Swansea area, and I think we're stopping in Cardiff, aren't we? So leave about an hour in the morning, and we can't wait. We're absolutely buzzing for it. So yeah, but one hopes that the levels of optimism and excitement pre-game are in direct contrast to post-game, where after that 90 minutes of stirring football from Norwich and Liam Manning, we are finally seeing something in terms of results that is better than what are they now, 2 wins in 11. It's, you can drill it even worse than that, really, for me recently. Is it 5 in 6 defeats now, 1 goal in 4?
Yeah, I think if you want to broaden it out even further, it's 4. Chris Gorham put this stat up. I might look for it actually while you're speaking, but it's over about half a season of numbers. I think it's about 4 wins, but let me double check.
Was that not Carrow Road though?
No, that's in general.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. So all in all,
yes, here we go. So 4 wins in 23 Championship games for Norwich since the start of March. So that covers Torrup, Wiltshire, and Manning, 18 points in the equivalent of half a season.
I'm just thinking, Wiltshire got 4 of those, didn't he? Draw at Borough and a win at Cardiff. So a win at home to Cardiff. So
a quarter of them points, basically.
Yeah, not good. However you slice it, and as a result, I can see some of the quotes. Some of the comments. They're probably echoing our lack of excitement around this weekend's events in Swansea, but things have to change, and I'm sure in this course of this preview we'll get into Liam Manning's latest media, the news around Mark Attanasio and his proposed Canary Call appearance next week. So there's things plenty to get into, but we will talk for an hour or so. We'll take a lot of feedback from fans, but it really only comes round to 3 o'clock tomorrow in South Wales and Norwich, and Liam Manning delivering results. It's not enough to, as they did midweek, as you could argue they did Patches, Bristol, Ipswich and West Brom, a performance nowhere near good enough, because as we've just discussed, the underlying results element of the equation is desperate, and that is why at kick-off they'll be in the bottom 3.
Yes, which isn't the place that they want to be, of course. And you look at some news from the Championship more broadly. Sheffield Wednesday looking pretty certain now to go into administration, which is clearly a very sorry state of affairs. But as things stand, prior to the points deduction that they will get if that does become a reality, they're only 2 points behind Norwich City, and that is a proper crisis club in terms of players not being paid and asset stripping essentially there as well. So much to kind of get your head around where Norwich City are at this moment in time. Let's kind of start, Pad, with, because obviously nature of midweek games, we can't sit down and do a podcast for rotoring reasons and logistical reasons in terms of travel and whatnot, especially this week with where you're going from 2 away games and 2 overnight stays. It becomes quite difficult, hence why we like to do these touch points with the good people. What were your reflections on what unfolded on Tuesday night? Because like you say, there were elements, particularly the first half, that did offer encouragement, that were an improvement, but ultimately we probably ended up with the same old story from a Norwich City perspective.
Hard to disagree. And if I go as I did there, sort of West Brom onwards, very similar. Elements of a performance, elements of, you can see now what they're trying to do. Whether you agree with it or not, there is something there. And probably that first 40-45 against a very poor Derby side, John Eustace, their head coach, admitted got his set up wrong, went to attacking, emptied the midfield areas, almost an open invitation to Norwich. That was better. That was considerably better. Yeah, as you said there, we just get 45. Sam asked yesterday, how do you go from 45 to 60, 70? that is the key for me, both individually as players, but also collectively in terms of performance. So, but nowhere near good enough. Still didn't score. Still threatened the scorer. Still looked too toothless. Still made some poor decisions in final third areas. But like the shape, they did have a little bit more control for me midfield-wise. Some lovely patterns of play. Some one-touch, incisive, forward, progressive play. I thought McLean experiment, if you want to call it that, dropping him deeper. That for me is where he needs to play now, because I'm not sure he's got the legs to in and around. With less time and space on the ball in centre mid areas now. I don't think that's necessarily where you get the most out of him. What he is still is very good on the ball, and we saw that with a bit more space and playing from a bit deeper. He's got the game in front of him. Left hand side of the three, I would like to see that again. I think there's a few questions about our sound.
Power sound, yeah, which I'm not quite sure why that would be the case, because we are not.
We are down in our bunker.
So we are deep underground, so which may well explain. I'll see if there's anything we can do our end on that, but I'm not really sure why that would be the case, to be honest, because it should just be a normal iPhone microphone, which is no different to what we typically use these. So, let's see if that works, or there's any improvement with that, and if not, then we will try and come back on something else. Sounding like that's pretty improvement, really. If we are sounding like dice, but yeah, that's not if you can. Look, it doesn't get any better. And if not, we can maybe do something else. I'll tell you what. Let me try and connect. That's really good. That means we are back. If not, we'll have to try something else. But yeah, as I said, we are probably not in the best place to it's really in terms of deep underground. But it's worked for. We've done it. So yeah, hopefully you'll be able to hear us now and see us now. And if you can't, I'm sure you will shout us. Paddy, try and carry on with what you were saying, and hopefully people can join us again.
They'll let us know. Yeah, they'll let us know. But as I was saying, getting to make Derby. Yeah, a lot of positives in that first half, but still lacking in the key areas. And Manning again touched on that yesterday. That's all they good, but they need to still sound better, says Jeffman. Should we kill it? Try again.
Hello, is that better, worse? If not, then we might have to give them an is it? Is that, yeah, I'm sure you guys will let us know if you can hear us off this one. And if not, then it's probably a location point rather than a technical point, which would be a shame because there's a lot to talk about. Well, hey, there we go. Better, clear now. Good. Apologies. We've moved on to a laptop as opposed to a phone, which I'm not quite sure.
It's not rockets. We're not sending people into the moon, don't you know?
I know, yeah.
These things are rough and ready.
There we go. You speak because I'm going to have to plug my laptop in if we're going to do it this way.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, basically, what I was trying to say there, not that it was really worth listening for or waiting for, but was essentially Derby for me, more of the same. Better first half against, as I was saying, a Derby team who John Eustace, their head coach, admitted afterwards got it wrong setup wise. Too many attacking players, emptied the midfield, so there was an open invitation to Norwich. Sadly, they didn't take that invitation. They didn't convert overwhelming. I think it was ended up about 70% of the possession. So I think they had twice, maybe even no, I think it was more than that. I think they had 2 or 3 times as many touches in the opposition box than Derby had in that first half, but it didn't translate into a goal. And then Liam Manning yesterday seemed to put it down to just a 5-minute spell in the second half where the wheels came off and that they came again. But yes, Cernak hit the post late on. They had 1 or 2 balls going across boxes, but did that feel really that Norwich set up in a way that they really had a proper go to try and get it back? I don't remember Zetterstrom in the Derby goal having too many saves to make in that second half when it went 1-0 Derby. So for me, again, more question marks around this head coach, what he's trying to do with this group of players. We finally got to see Jacob Wright, but you felt sorry for him being thrown back into the fray after 5.5 games in that environment and expected then to somehow, trigger something. I thought, having watched it now, the McLean interview he did with you and Chris after the game was quite enlightening in the sense of, putting it on players aren't making the right decisions. They aren't driving it forward individually, but still nothing in terms of a solution to why that is. But, it needs to come. And a lot of the heavy lifting over this last week feels to me to be on the shoulders of Matthias Chris-Gordon, 1 or 2 of the other injured players. And that then adding, as Manning has liberally said, more competition. Players who are in the team know they can't now drop their levels because they'll be out of the team. So let's see if it is simply returning players over these next 2 or 3 games engenders a sense of, okay, focusing minds from those who've been getting the shirt to produce. Because if not, I don't know where they go to in terms of where the solutions lie for this other than removal of head coaches and maybe sporting directors. But it's very evident. We had that sense. We said it, I remember, on the team news at Derby. There was no sense inside that club post-Bristol that Liam Manning was under any imminent danger. That seems to be very much the case subsequently. He's messaged that out 2 or 3 times. I asked him after the Derby game, do you have the support of the people who matter? Yes. It was a very pointed answer, but yes, nevertheless, he followed that up yesterday. He still says he retains their support. We'll get more from Mark Attanasio now next week in terms of where he sees it. But that is very much the sense that he is not under imminent danger. He is the man they feel can drive this forward. Okay, but you're currently in charge of a team who are in the bottom 3 and have won 2 games from 11, 5 defeats in 6, 1 goal in 4. Where is the evidence on the 11 games under Liam Manning that he is going to turn this around? But, that's the scenario he faces, and he knows that. He's getting pig sick, I would imagine, of having to answer questions on his own future. They will continue, unfortunately, until the team that he crafts on that pitch are actually capable of going out and winning championship games of football. I thought yesterday he seemed to be suggesting they get the first one and it'll be almost a dam-breaking confidence will grow and then they'll go on a run. Not so sure.
No, me neither. I was also sort of scratching my head a little bit around. He said the last 4 performances had offered encouragement. I think there are elements to all of them that we could pick out. For the last 20 minutes against West Brom, they've looked as lively as probably they have done. Obviously, without scoring a goal. Ipswich was the first 45 minutes. I thought they pressed well, but that was probably about it really. They didn't really have much intent at the end of that. Bristol City, I thought was fine. I thought they were pretty ponderous for most of it. And then Derby, we're talking again about the first half. So he's stretching out kind of clumps of games. I understand why he's doing that, given he's trying to, point to signs that things are getting better. But at some point, Paddy, and this has been the case all season, it needs to be more than a 45-minute clump, a 20-minute burst. Because actually, you look at the other night, for as much as we can talk about what Norwich did in that opening 45 minutes, ultimately Derby did something greater in a 10-minute spell that they had, and probably the only real 10-minute spell they had in that game after half-time.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about how Zetterstrom wasn't worked. Kovacevic has pulled off a great stop from Carlton Morris literally a minute before Pelle Matson, not for the first time. We saw it against Ipswich, gets rolled far too easily. He's supposed to be this rough, tough, box-to-box physical presence in the centre of the midfield. He needs to start pulling his finger out and offering a bit more in those close quarters action because he was rolled far too easily on the byline. Then he cuts it back and Ofo, wasn't it, unmarked. It's a good finish. But again, bracketed by Liam Manning as another soft goal. So, okay, we're hearing these are soft goals and what are you doing about it? What are you and your coaching staff and those group of players doing to eradicate those concessions? Because the reality is, and I tend to agree with him, it didn't feel like Derby. Go back to I'll tell you what came into my mind. Go back to the Torop Derby away game last season when Norwich won 3-2. That start of the second half, fueled by that sense of injustice. If you remember that goal that Norwich scored, Sargent, that was clearly over the dead ball line, but was given. The ferocity in that group of Derby players, in that home crowd, that was a back against the wall job. And Norwich had to withstand a lot of pressure. They conceded in that spell just after half time, but they managed to go up the other end and eventually get that win. This Norwich didn't face that at midweek. It was a side no doubt stung by a few choice words from John Eustace. They made a substitution. They made a tactical switch. They matched up Norwich defensively, shape-wise, and they just nudged the dial. And that was enough to get the better of this Norwich team. And that would be the concern for me, that it doesn't take much for them the brittleness around this group at the minute to resurface, even after what should have been a confidence-inducing 45 minutes, where they've certainly dominated that 45 more than probably any other game I can think of. Maybe West Brom at home to a degree, but and yet that wasn't enough when modicum amounts of pressure came on, as you would expect from a team who themselves were looking for a first win at home after a first half where they got booed off. Of course, they're going to come out and attack and show some intent and appetite. So you know that's coming, and yet this Norwich, for 5 or 10 minutes there, just were on the ropes and were not able to repel that. Because if they had done, I think the reality is then the longer that game goes at 0-0, those home fans get on the backs of those players again. Norwich can tap into that, turn it to their advantage, and that nervousness would have maybe worked in Norwich's favour. So, as Liam Manning has said quite often, you face adversity in this league, and too often now. And it is a bit of a contrast on this particular aspect, because they saw that at Portsmouth. They had their backs against the wall there. Stoke, Coventry, they found a way. What's happened to those attributes? It's almost like they've now headed south as well. And when you've not got a shape and you've not got a structure in terms of control of the ball and chance creation and chance taking to fall back on, you need those elements of, almost bloody-minded obduracy. Where have they gone now? Harry Darling is, and I'm not singling him out, but his performance levels have dropped off a cliff. That's symptomatic of Norwich as a collective. And maybe that's just they feel beaten down by it all, and the confidence is drained out. They know they go turn up at Carrow Road now, and it's not any suggestion that the fans are to blame. They're not. They're pig sick of what they're being served up, and they're right to get on the backs of those players. But is that an environment now that too many of these players are brittle and can't handle it? And maybe that flows back to recruitment and buying project players, to give them that terminology, rather than more in the Darling camp who could handle, what it's like to go out in terms of a very, challenging championship environment and handle that and come through at the other side. It just feels increasingly like the recruitment has been set out of sync with what Liam Manning maybe was trying to do with this group of players, because we were told he was one of these who comes in, doesn't need a huge amount of time and can improve. He's an improver of players. But if the raw material he's been given is project players, then is it any wonder we find ourselves in this never-ending cycle of waiting for it to happen? And yet every game so far we've been very frustrated.
Yes, a lot of kind of potential within that squad, but maybe not a lot of sort of current ability, so to speak, to get them out of what they're in at the moment. I mean, what I mentioned, kind of the psychology of this group, dropping into the bottom three. Do you think that's something that will have registered to them, that will have mattered to them? Because, again, to kind of pick themselves up and to gain confidence at the moment, well, looking at the league table isn't going to do a lot in that regard at this moment in time.
Well, you'd hope not, because they're brittle enough as it is without the weight of they're in the bottom three. I still, and again, I agree with Manning. Nobody is pushing back on that. This is a grave situation when you find yourself in the bottom three. But he is right. There is. We're 11 games into a 46-game regular season, huge amounts of points to play for. So I don't fear that that this is it now, and they're in an 8-9 cycle, and it doesn't matter what they do, they won't be able to climb them and haul themselves out of it, because we've talked about Sheffield Wednesday. There's one or two other basket case clubs down there, and at the moment, sadly, Norwich are in that bracket for me. But I think you get, and again, I'm not trying to parrot what Manning's saying, but there is no doubt when Chris Garden was playing there alongside Sargent, there was real threat level to what Norwich were trying to do at the top end of the pitch. If they can structurally get it right across midfield areas and defensively, I think they carry enough of a threat with those two. Now, obviously, this is this side of January window, so with Sargent, who knows? But but certainly if those two remain in tandem, remain fit for the duration, I wouldn't personally feel that League One is where this is going to end up. But the fact we're even having a debate here about relegation, about League One, underlines how so far off what this season is being badged as, even 11 games in, to have to even countenance talk of relegation, bottom three, League One, is quite a sad indictment on what has gone wrong so far from top to bottom of that football club.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, the beauty of where Norwich are at the moment and the fact it is so early means they have got time to do something about it and to put it right. I mean, it's we're coming up to the quarter stage now of the season. So not probably as much time as you'd like, but there's still enough time to get themselves out of it. I mean, look at Coventry last year and the state they were in. Look at Norwich under David Wagner, who were 17th in November and ended up in the top six. So it can change, and this league is all about putting runs together and trying to break those. And I guess it's the moment. It's just about trying to break that cycle that they are in. I mean, we spoke a little bit about this. I think it might have been after Tuesday night's game where the last Norwich manager who lost 4 on the spin and 5 in 6 was David Wagner. Went to South Wales. That, of course, was Cardiff rather than Swansea. And it was that win that kind of ignited everything. So maybe there's a bit of symmetry there if you want something
that was the final Weber game. That was the final Weber game, yeah.
It was.
That was, the end of that era, wasn't it? Although he still obviously hung around. But in terms of passing the baton. And they were 2-1 down going into the last 10 minutes, weren't they?
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, on seasons, things can change. But let's hope they're not 2-1 down, because I wouldn't like to think, I don't know how many, we haven't checked, have we? But I don't know how many are going, but that is proper devotion. If you're a Norwich fan, particularly if you're coming from Norfolk tomorrow, to go all the way there off the back of even the away element has now dipped with Ipswich and with Derby as well. So that is a huge amount of commitment to the cause, and it's not based on anything you're seeing on the pitch from this group of players. Let's be honest, or head coach. So. But who knows? Yeah, maybe that's what it needs. That seems to be where Manning's at. That it's almost the watershed result. It's breaking the seal, and then thereafter he thinks that they will have turned a corner. He has to probably talk in those terms, but I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure, because there's still so much you look at in terms of the setup of this team, in terms of the individuals, and you're concerned that there's a path they're on, but they're still so far behind where they need. And Manning admitted this recently, didn't he? In terms of where he wanted them to be right now, they're way off it. So, you've made the point, to go from where they are now, and this is maybe being wildly optimistic at the moment, but to get from where they are now to get themselves anywhere near top 10 is a hell of a leap in terms of productivity, in terms of points, in terms of that consistency of results. So, while I don't think we're in a relegation season, if I'm honest, and that's not trying to be arrogant or complacent, equally, in very short order, we can forget about talking about anything about promotion this season. I think that's stating the obvious, because that, as much as it'll be what Norwich need to do, the other teams, you see them now, the Covs, the Middlesbroughs of this world, they'll be over the hill and gone. So then we're in, whether they like it or not, another transitional season. And that certainly was not what this was portrayed as before a ball was kicked.
No, I've just had a notification saying Sheffield Wednesday have been deducted 12 points, so that maybe will help one.
Two to avoid.
Two to avoid. That's a low bar, isn't it? I mean, you make a good point in terms of if they want to get the season going and what it looks like and how to maybe close that gap to the top 6. And like you say, they're going to have to do that pretty quickly. I'm just trying to get a league table up to see what the volume of points is at this moment of time from 6th place.
What are they on, 6?
Sheffield
Wednesday.
Sheffield Wednesday, they're on 6. Yeah, they're 2 behind, so they'll be on minus
6.
Yeah.
Minus 6.
Yes, correct. So Norwich are on 8 and in 6th place Stoke on 18. So there's already a 10-point gap.
Yeah.
And maybe we're away with the fairies, but that's the ambition that Norwich set at the start of the season. And for 11 games in to be 10 points off, something would have had to have gone badly wrong, and indeed it has. We will come back round to speak about tomorrow's game a little bit later. We're going to move on to this from and Jack's comment. It kind of sets us off. Anti-Cianats, I mean, when you saw it on Tuesday night, particularly with knees, you're always wincing a little bit about what it could be with ACLs and all of the various ligaments and issues that can cause. And it's about as bad as you could get as a prognosis. A ruptured ACL, out for the rest of the season. I mean, first and foremost, it's absolutely gutting for Anti-Cianats, isn't it? At this stage of his career, an important season for him at Norwich City. Didn't ever really feel like it got going so far this season. Just really gutting for him on a human level.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't wish that on any footballer, let alone Norwich footballers. They do live in these cosseted worlds, and maybe slightly detached from the real world in many ways. But that is a long road back now. And okay, he's a young man, and he will have the best of care, I'm sure, in terms of that recovery. But to pick up where Liam Manning went with it yesterday, it's definitely this season. Couldn't really give any indication, whether it's the start of next season he's available, and even at the point where he does come back, the question marks will be with an injury as grave as that, even with 2025 sort of medical health and recovery, as opposed to I mean, Gaza did a lot of his cruciates, didn't he? I mean, we're going back to a different bygone era, and he was never the same player again. So that would be the bigger concern for an asset that they paid £8.5 million for, and it's it's wretched on every level, because as much as it hadn't come for him this season, he hit the post there, didn't he, just before probably his most meaningful action of numerous games, and there's no doubt, even with Chris Gordon coming back in, I think Anthony Cernak was still going to be a frontline part of what they're trying to do at the top end of the pitch, and now that isn't the case, and it's almost, as he trudged off and he was in, you could see he was already in tears before he got to the touchline. Liam Manning said how distressed he was, both, after the game and then subsequently the days after. It almost felt, as I wrote at the time of my point, a bit of a metaphor for where the season is going now that, you have yet another injury and, okay, in an in-game scenario, but nevertheless, yet another long-term injury, and to a player who, the hope was still, that something would catch, something would sort of click, and he would start to produce what he did last season, which was a very encouraging first season in English football. Again, we've said it quite often, for his age and where he played on the pitch in the Championship, he was right up there, top 3, top 4 in terms of goal contributions per appearances. That was a real solid base to kick on, but it wasn't happening, and now it won't happen. So, best wishes to Antti, but you almost have to be very brutal and put him to the side now. And it's, for me, it's about what does that mean for Liam Manning, and in terms of attacking options at his disposal. The good thing, I guess, is he confirmed that Mankel Forsen was back in the mix from next week, on the basis Chris Gordon comes back in. Papa Jallo, clearly you'd hope, would be early part of the new year. Probably does raise a question mark around January now and what that looks like in terms of recruitment. But
they're going to need a wide option, aren't they?
Well,
I think.
Yeah, you could argue that they needed a wide option in the summer. Anyway. Yeah. Elliot Miles, I guess, is in the mix, albeit very unproven, very raw, but high hopes for him. And but Forsen back in, particularly because of where he sees him now in that 10, and he spoke about this yesterday as well. He started the season with him in the 10. He feels he's a natural fit for what Liam Manning wants in that area of the pitch. So, yes, Antti, that's terrible for him, terrible for Norwich, but at least with Forsen coming back in quick order with Chris Gordon this weekend, head count wise at the top end of the pitch, it's not oh my god, what they're going to do now, who's going to play in and around Sargent. They still have options, which they should do given the scale of turnover they did in the summer. There's plenty of players on that payroll that they should be able to find solutions, and that's Liam Manning's responsibility now.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. They are kind of shorter in wide areas in terms of those natural wide options. It is really Diallo, isn't it, that we look at as kind of the traditional winger who wants to, he drifts inside a bit more, but has that pace and power to get in behind. It's kind of left with what Mate Jurasek, Oscar Schwartau, still not really sure if he is a wide player or not. I'd probably like to see him come central a little bit. I think he's actually been one of the shining lights in the last few weeks in terms of how he stepped up and taken some responsibility. Who else am I missing in those attacking areas?
The lesser spotted Tony Springett.
Of course. You mentioned Elliot Miles. So again, we're kind of getting to those kind of youth levels, aren't we now, in terms of some of those wide options. Mundell Smith, obviously Chris Gordon, I suppose could probably play there. I'm sure there's someone we're missing. So please shout if so, but maybe not. I know they were sort of quite light on the ground. Schlupp could obviously push up into those positions. I guess that you could probably, as they did at Middlesbrough last year, you could push Jack Stacey up, and if they were absolutely desperate,
a shout, mate.
Tavares, yeah, I mean, he's still, is he 15, 16? He's still very, very young. So it would be a hell of a call to throw him in at this stage. But that's kind of the level it's getting to in those wide areas, which, again, I guess probably to bring everything full circle and back to recruitment, you kind of scratch your head a little bit as to why they're so short and so thin on the ground in terms of proper natural wide options, because really they are sort of down to Mate Jurasek.
But is that not just a reflection of Liam Manning, who must have had a huge amount of input into that recruitment profile, saying effectively, I want a sergeant type and then I want 2 10s, because that's how he started the season. He wanted central areas, as he did at Bristol. He didn't have flying out, and I mean, Mehmeti maybe is the counter to that argument, but as I recall, a lot of the width came from his fullbacks in that Bristol side. Was that what he was seeking here? And as a result, they haven't gone. Obviously, science went. You needed to like for like, and that was Jallow. But over and above that, the recruitment would suggest that they didn't envisage needing those. They didn't progress on a Lewis Dobbin move. He went off to Preston and has done some high catching things there. I think it might be past rules time, to be fair, but he could probably still do a job.
On Finley Welsh, he's been out for about a year, hasn't he?
With
an ACL, more central. Anis Ben Slimani out with a quad injury. So I think, again, it sort of haven't really got a timeline on him, I don't think, but I think that's going to be New Year. LaShawn Sealy, we haven't seen since pre-season. Forsyth is still making his way back. He obviously had that surgery in the international break, didn't he? So I think he's still coming back from that knee injury, but he can play out wide, but predominantly more central. So again, we're kind of looking at maybe square pegs in round holes again in those wide areas. It's going to be really interesting. Maybe we'll come on to this a little bit later in terms of what that looks like tomorrow. Paddy, let's speak about Mark Attanasio. We've mentioned it. Twitchy Terry's asked a question. He's asked if we're excited for him to arrive next week. I'm not sure if excitement is what I'm feeling, but intrigue maybe. And then he's gone and said, I'm hoping, if nothing else, we should receive some sense of what on earth the plan is here. And then there is a comment underneath from Liam, I think, on the same question, which is, hey guys, will Attanasio also be speaking to you guys or other media whilst here, Paddy? Don't know at the minute.
Well, all I'd say, me and you were off yesterday, but I was, now with hindsight, I mean, I was told in the press room at Derby after midweek that maybe the point had been reached where Mark would have to do some media without naming the club official in question. So now, off the back of this announcement, fair play to the Norfolk boys. We know from when we spoke to Mark in the summer, and he was very generous with his time, give us 2 hours at the training ground. We sat down with him for the Pink and Pod, that these things don't get put together on the hoof. A lot of planning would have had to go in there. So fair play to those boys. But now we know that probably was in the pipeline, for a period, and maybe they were just waiting to see the trajectory of the results, maybe, and the levels of need for the figurehead now, effectively, to put his head above the parapet. So, by all accounts, he's here for a period of time next week, and that probably underlines the gravity of the situation, that he's going to be boots on the ground. They were getting a lot of flack that are these absentee landlords. So I'm paraphrasing, but on social media in the last sort of period. So maybe it's as a counter to that he's going to come, he's going to be physically here, he's going to meet the people he needs to meet, and crucially, Canary Call, which the way it's been badged, it's going to be fans asking him questions. So they'll do a better job than we would be able to do. So I'm looking forward to it in terms of the first point you put up there about mood, because we will get some clear answers. And for me, it has to be on 3 areas. It needs to be on the pitch, which is Manning, his coaching staff, and then players. What he makes of that. Why is it going so poorly? What does that say about those decisions they made in the summer? It's off the pitch around Ben Napper and him as an individual and his team. And that's recruitment. That's the fitness and recovery situations, which we've talked about liberally. I think there's questions to answer there, and I'm hoping Mark will be posed those. And also off the pitch, it is now the Carrow Road delivery farce, and what that says about what they're trying to do in that area, and what he feels of how that's been handled, and the lack of proper engagement with the most affected parts of that plan in the short term, i.e. those 3,500 Norwich season ticket holders. So they're the 3 areas that I'm looking for. But as I say, to go back to the original point, we don't know. We having been off yesterday, I'm just picking that baton up today. We are in dialogue now, and we'll communicate that out. We will certainly ask the question if he's over here for a period of time. Of course, we would love to have a touch point with him, but I have been in rooms when he's talked about how much he likes Canary Call, and he's almost been tempted to ring in on occasion. So maybe he wants to do Canary Call, fair play, but it would be good. And there's nothing at this point in time which makes me think it's anything that would be a reflection on us as an organisation. But ultimately, doesn't matter which organisation it is. I think it is, and the reaction to that news was very much good, fair play, fronting up. And
the key is that he's speaking, isn't it? I think the point is it doesn't really matter who he's speaking to. I'm really pleased he's actually speaking directly with fans. I think that's needed. That's a step forward. That's good. And really interested to see what he says. And obviously you guys can bring in and put your questions to him. I think there's a way to send them in advance as well. So if you check out Rob Butler's socials and the Radio Norfolk socials, you will be able to do that. I mean, we've got a few kind of comments. Just take that one off a minute because I wanted to get your view on a couple of these. I mean, Sue saying, I think 100% it should have been Ben Napper coming out well before this.
That's not a good look, is it?
We'll come back to that in just a moment. Simon saying Attanasio will not do anything. Just say stick with what we've got, which is a recipe for disaster. The underlying problem has always been I'm guessing that's Ben Napper's data-driven rather than football ability. Until he goes Napper, I mean, there will be no change. That's Simon's view. Let me see what else we have got here. Brad saying he's very brave going on Canary Call. Well, good. There should be that bravery in there wanting to stick up. Fair play as well. I guess that's one for the fans, isn't it? In terms of the questions that he gets asked. And Nigel saying surely the owners must feel the disappointment of so many fans, and I think they do. As well, I think on this point I would push back on this because if I know the Norfolk boys, I'm pretty confident in saying, look, ultimately it'll be up for them to say, but I would be absolutely shocked if he is in receipt of the questions or if there is a want for kind of softer callers to be put through. From my experience, that just isn't the case. That's not the way those guys operate, and I don't think that's what Mark himself would want as well. Having we've both met him on a couple of occasions, I think he would want that honesty and those difficult questions. That's certainly been the sense that I've got from him. So I don't think it's going to be one of these neat, fluffy PR exercises where they just kind of put through people that are going to agree with him or put questions about the pies at Carrow Road or whatever.
Well, I mean, you were a week or so back in the Lion and Castle, and that was pretty raw boned and no holds barred questions put to two of the executive on that occasion. And you would hope it's along a similar path. It's not about digging out people necessarily. It's a quest for answers, and what he says matters because he is ultimately the overlord of this football club. He is bankrolling it, him and Norfolk Holdings. It's his vision that Ben Napper, Zoe Webber, the executive, all the people underneath them, Liam Manning, the players, the coaching staff, they're all following a vision that has been set out by Mark Attanasio and Norfolk Holdings. So to actually hear from him and get a sense of his mood as well, I think is going to be very welcome. I think that going back to what I said earlier about what we were intimated post Derby, I think it got to the point now you're dropping into the bottom three, all those adverse metrics around Manning, the reaction at Carrow Road now booed off every game the last three, going for Napper, going for Zoe Webber. There's no way there could have been a hand-sitting exercise between now and the AGM at the start of December. Something or somebody in a senior position had to come out and address this, and on that measure, fair play. They've grasped the nettle, and let's see what he's got to say. But I'd echo what you say. I won't be worried that it'll be a PR soft soap exercise because ultimately they don't get anything from that other than further criticism. At least not giving anything any confidences away, but we had a couple of touch points with Ben Napper in the summer. And before the first one of them, I said to him, look, we're going to have to be pretty hard here and go down the route of, some uncomfortable and awkward questioning, because if we don't, fans rightly will say, well, why have you been, so easy on them? But B, him not answering those tough questions, not at least meeting the questions that fans want head on, doesn't move it further forward for him or the football club as a result. And my advice would be to anybody going into next week is the same. It needs to happen. It needs to be every question, any fan who is frustrated by the current state of affairs would want to be in that room asking, he needs to be asked. And as I say, go back to what I said previously, it's those three areas for me. It's on the pitch and it's off the pitch.
Yeah, agreed. And I get to stand next to Chris Gorham after every game and listen to him speak to managers and players, and I know that he always gets the tone right in terms of the questions that he asks. Rob as well does a very good job. Phil Daly, all of the guys there at Reading Norfolk. So I'm no doubt it will be the type of thing that, as Paddy said, it probably needs to be. To go back to this comment from Sue Pad in terms of maybe whether Attanasio is the right person, it should have been him at this stage. What do you make of that viewpoint? That actually maybe Ben Napper, I mean, in Sue's view, should have come out well before this. But in general, should it have been Ben Napper really that came out and spoke?
Well, we wouldn't have been averse to it, would we? But, from his point of view, what's that going to turn into? It's going to turn into are you going? Is Liam Manning going? And of course, maybe he needs to answer those questions. But, I mean, for me, it's less that, and it's more the fact that Attanasio is now in the front. What does that say about Ben Napper? It doesn't put him in a great position, if I'm honest. We go from Liam Manning every week, multiple times every week, to then it goes up the food chain to the owner, effectively, of the football club. Given that he was on the front foot in the summer, to go back to my previous point, and did 2 or 3 media touch points, but maybe they just, think that he's on a downer if he was to come out and do the media, because lots of people have already made their mind up. What could he possibly say to turn that? So maybe they feel it now has gone above him too. It needs to be Attanasio's soundbites. Yeah,
can I just say on this point, can only speak from our experience. Again, I generally don't think it will be a PR exercise at all for the reasons that me and Paddy have discussed. But on that second point, I mean, we've spoken to Mark Attanasio at length. Obviously, we've had him on the podcast. And it's worth saying that was done without him having any prior knowledge of what we were going to talk about or ask about. And I think after an AGM, which was likewise. So certainly that's not been the case in the conversations that we've done with him. So I don't think that, well, in fact, I know that won't be the case with the one that Reading Norfolk.
I mean, let's put it another way, Connor. I mean, a guy who's as successful as he is as a business person, and also in a sporting sense with the Brewers, success measured in, the longevity he's had there, and, serial playoff contenders now. Do you not think he's got the right people around him that he would be fully briefed?
He'll know what's coming, right?
Exactly.
It's not stupid.
Either he knows himself because him and his son have got their finger on the pulse, which we know they consume it, albeit from a distance, but they do consume everything. I know for a fact that he was in dialogue with the sporting director during the game against it was the last Bristol City. So, they're watching from afar. They're actually in dialogue with the people who matter during the game. So certainly this idea that he's not across the brief, I think, is for the birds. So he will expect every searingly forensic question coming.
Yeah, and just on this point, I mean, Adam's asked in terms of Attanasio admits he knows nothing. I would say maybe not nothing, but I think there's maybe still a building knowledge point, which is fair, because he's only been in the sport for a few years. What do you make to that point in terms of no point asking him about on the pitch issues in kind of that context?
Well, maybe if you want to take that point, fine. But the context of, well, you've put your trust in Ben Napper, and Ben Napper certainly should be fully aware of all the on the pitch matters. So, do you still retain full faith in Ben Napper? That's where I'll be going with that question. Yeah, if you want to get him to talk about a back 3 or a back 5, then I don't think he's probably the best man qualified to talk about that, or why they're seemingly unable to construct attacks and score goals, but or keep the ball out of their net. But indirectly, that is, for me, woven around, is Ben Napper still your man? Is he still driving this forward? Does he still retain your full support? And if he does, then by definition, he's content, not happy, clearly, where we are right now, but he's content that Liam Manning is still the right man for the job.
Yep, so we will obviously bring you any update around if we are or are not going to get a touch point with him, but still, I think that's going to be a really important touch point. It's next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Obviously, BBC Radio Norfolk will be able to watch it, listen to it across their channels, and I think we'll all be tuning in with great intrigue on what he said there. Let's I'll just flash this up from George, which is a different perspective, maybe to some, in terms of stick with Liam Manning and stick with managers when times are tough. He'll turn it around. I think we all certainly hope that will be the case. It would be some story from here if they are able to do that. Let's go back to one that I found earlier from Richard, which was about Shane Duffy and whether he will start. Obviously, Liam Manning was asked yesterday about the episode that played out on social media on Tuesday, which was pretty unsavoury, I think, for everybody.
Embarrassing.
It just was not. It's not helpful, is it? It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't really achieve anything. What do you think, Paddy, on that? What is your perspective in terms of how that's all unfolded? Because it's not the first time that man has put himself front and centre of controversy, to put it mildly.
In the context of what will he play tomorrow, you mean?
Yeah, I guess in the context of yesterday, but also just tomorrow, but also the general mood and whatnot. To have a player biting back at fans is not. I mean, he argues it's passion. I think lots of people feel passion and don't resort to maybe some of the language that he used in those tweets. But there we go. And what do you make of both of those strands to it?
Well, it's just add another one to the crime sheet, isn't it? It's a long crime sheet, and he's not going to change now, I don't think, in terms of how he carries himself. And wasn't in the presser yesterday. You were. So my sense was Manning felt he needed that like a hole in the head to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Talked about how he had him in his office. I don't think we quite got to the pitch of whether he'd been disciplined in terms of fines and what have you. But my sense would be he probably has. I thought he left it a bit open-ended in terms of whether that disciplinary arc would incorporate. He's not under consideration for this weekend, because he then went on to say he's trained fine and he's fully trained, and that was the original plan, that he would be involved for Swansea in some capacity. Even before this, I didn't actually see him start. I don't think he goes from not having kicked the ball under Manning to suddenly starting in a defensive 2 or 3. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he retains the McLean, Medic, Darling as a 3. I think that there's a lot of merit in that in terms of on the ball, certainly. So if that's the case, then you don't really need to countenance, do I put Shane Duffy back in or not? Because I don't see that happening anyway. But whether it means he's not in the 20 now, off the back of this episode, then we will find out in due course. But I just think zooming out, not zooming into that particular incident, which we're all most people I think who've got a brain in their head would think that was completely ridiculously unnecessarily poor from that man, and the timing of it is horrendous. It flows into this sense that it's a rudderless ship, and the culture is wrong and the behaviours aren't right. All the things Liam Manning says that he's trying to instill, that episode there would suggest that isn't the case, or he's got plenty of work still to do with certain individuals. But for me, the reality is, I think if it had made sense to all parties, he wouldn't be here. He'd have gone in the summer. There was interest. Clearly, it didn't amount to a point where the sweet spot was met, and it made sense for him, maybe Norwich and maybe a potential new club. And to go from that to almost like that, now he could be the defensive saviour. Again, it's a bit of an indictment of how this season has unravelled to this point, that you're now reliant on him and his experience and all those other elements. Off the back of the last season, in terms of how that season started and those off the field episodes that involve the long arm of the law, and then even around that Oxford sort of debacle where he was disciplined by Attanasio. He clearly took that pretty badly. You spoke to him around that game, and he pushed back pretty hard. And then lo and behold, Attanasio in short order is no longer in the building. All these things, I'm sure, flowed into that final decision from Ben Napper. So, yeah. Not great, but are we surprised? No.
Before we come on to the game, I like this question from Aaron, so I'm going to ask you something a little bit different. Do you think we can put Carrow Road forward as a venue for that's the 2035 World Cup, isn't it, which is going to be held here? Could push forward some much-needed changes and free up some funds for other improvements. It's a very different point, I guess. That would be quite good.
25.
Sorry, it's 35. I think he does correct himself later. But yeah, I've just looked it up because I was like, that's this year. But no, it is 2035. I mean, it would be good to see Carrow Road used as a venue in that context, I guess.
Would be, yeah. I'm not sure about the investment infrastructure element of whether that would necessarily be an accelerant in terms of finance. I'm not sure, because the reality is if you compare that with obviously the finances and the commercial deals and partnerships around the men's version next summer, then it's not even on the same stratosphere, is it? So but in terms of the visibility of Carrow Road, yeah, I mean what a great thing that would be to be to be on the roster. But I'd imagine there's a pretty competitive process for that, you would think, to be one of the host venues.
Yeah, agreed. Point here about Rory McConville pushing for a loan in January. I think you can definitely see that. To turn our attentions to tomorrow then, Paddy, and I guess to sort of finish the show.
Do we have to?
Yeah, unfortunately we do. I mean, Liam was speaking yesterday, and he kind of referenced it in terms of, this team keeps squandering opportunities. At some point, they need to take one. We're not even spoken about Swansea in the form that they're in. They're one of the worst, or certainly lower down performing Championship teams in the current form table were beaten by QPR 1-0 at home on Wednesday. This is another opportunity for Norwich to get points. And like we've both said, that's got to start at some point somewhere. And it feels as again, not to parrot what Liam Manning says, but I think he's right. They can't keep letting these types of opportunities slip through their fingers.
Is Attanasio getting a kick now?
Yes, started on Wednesday, I believe.
Did he? Okay, yeah. Well, that's not the scenario we'd need, is it? If Attanasio puts a dent in this process that Norwich are trying to build under Manning. But yeah, I mean, very similar in that respect to Derby, that they're going to a team who have a lot of the same vulnerabilities and frailties, and their form would indicate that. But still, even in that environment midweek, and even off the back of a very dominant 45 minutes, Norwich couldn't get the job done. As you say, as Liam Manning says, they need to get the job done in short order because, and I don't think it is a coincidence that the timing of the Attanasio touch point is before they go back to Carrow Road and Hull. If they're going back to Hull off the back of a defeat at home, 2 defeats on the road,
defeats on the spin.
Whether Mark Attanasio puts his best foot forward or not, Carrow Road is going to be a very toxic environment. So to avoid some of that or take the edge off some of that, I think there was a comment early on that this is a big game for a lot of reasons, and it does feel like that, because it's all very well Liam Manning saying it'll just take one and then we'll be on our way. When's that one coming?
Indeed, and for me, it's about, as we've spoken about a lot in recent weeks, Josh Sargent and unlocking him a little bit. I thought they did that with a bit more joy. Yeah, I think it is, yeah. With a lot more joy on Tuesday night. Some of the stuff they did in possession was better. It kind of got lost in the overall result. But I tell you what I've noticed about him over recent weeks. If you remember Josh Sargent last season predominantly, doesn't really take a shot unless he's well set, unless the opportunity is quite good in terms of he's got a good line of sight. He can, execute the shot in the way that he wants to do. He's not someone that really snatches at shots. Back to that Bristol City game on Saturday, someone rolled the ball to him on the edge of the box and he just absolutely sliced across one that flew out. There was a couple the other night that he just he actually had better options either side and he opted to shoot into a load of bodies. That, I guess, sums up the frustration, understandably, that man is feeling. And you look at the opportunities predominantly that Norwich created the other night. One fell to Liam Gibbs. One fell to Oscar Schwartau. Cianats, obviously hitting the post. None of them, again, fell to Josh Sargent. That's got to be the key, isn't it? Because for as much as we can talk about the recruitment, if you've got a striker with that much talent, if you aren't supplying him with chances, that is always, for me, going to come back on your head coach and the way the team is set up.
Quite right. And you're talking arguably the best striker in the division. You're not dealing with average raw material there. You're dealing with a proven, voluminous goal scorer at this level, and even started the season in this vein. So for him to go backwards,
let's hope not.
Yeah, let's hope not. But in what is he now? 7 games without a goal.
6. Yeah.
That for me, as always, when you look at Josh Sargent Championship, that's not about Josh Sargent and the Championship. That's about the setup with the team around him. And again, to go back round to the full where we came in here on this preview show today, it would appear Matthias Quistgaard has got to be the second coming because he's got to score goals. He's got to unlock Josh Sargent's
link the play.
Yeah, he's basically got to, I don't know, he's got to have a Superman cape with a big S on underneath his kit tomorrow because that seems to be the solution internally to a lot of these problems. Whether it is or not, time will tell. Yes, there were some positive signs. I think back to Blackburn that day, Coventry obviously scored, and then sadly it was the second half where he landed awkwardly, jarred his knee, and that was that. But there was clear evidence that those two, I think, in tandem, can be good individually, but can be good in terms of Josh Sargent, just to take some of the heat off him, to take some of the focus off him, not to have all the defensive players he's up against focusing directly on him, because there's another player there who has the same penalty box predatory instinct. So let's hope, in terms of narrowly talking about Josh Sargent and getting him scoring again, that having Quistgaard in and around him again does afford him a greater degree of freedom to get back on the goal trail. And the thing with him, well, I don't necessarily share Liam Manning's sort of optimism that one win and then on they go. What I would say is if Josh Sargent gets one, you see how he scores. He does score in clumps. He does score in repetitive cycles. I think if he could get himself back up and running, little shot of confidence, which even he would need, despite being a proven striker at this level, that could just be something that sparks him to go on a nice little run. And then you hope if that's the case, and at least they've got a goal threat then, that can, A, bring a bit more confidence through the side, but B, also know that like midweek, you go and give a soft goal away. Oh no, that's it. We're done for. We're not showing enough. Sargent's not at the moment seemingly getting himself in those positions to score, not getting the service that he needs. At least if he can start to fire again at the top end of the pitch, it gives him a little bit more insurance if it's still a work in progress in defensive areas.
How's it going to go?
Not giving it too much thought, if I'm honest, Connor.
That's probably for the best, yeah.
Yeah. And again, as I said, when we were doing predictions pre-match at Derby, how can you really say anything around this Norwich group at the minute on the evidence of what you're seeing? It has to be more hope and hoping that something comes together. It's not based on any evidence, really, for me. So, home win, 2-1 Swansea.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think Swansea are in a bad spot, but I think there'll be some reaction. I think it seems to be the case that if you're a team in need of a result and Norwich are coming up, you're almost rubbing your hands together, aren't you, with delight at the minute, which is a real shame. So, yeah, I'm going to join you. Home win. I'm going to go 1-0 Swansea. I think it could be quite tight and probably quite dour as a game of football.
Soft goal?
Yeah, probably inevitable. Thank you very much for not just joining us and watching, but also persevering through some technical difficulties at the start. We muddled through, we fixed it. I've no idea why my phone wasn't working, but one of those things. We got it, and you got us speaking nonsense in the end, so that's the main thing. We will be in South Wales tomorrow, pinkin.com, of course, the place to go. We'll have more build-up throughout the afternoon into the evening, and of course be at the, what's it called these days? Is it still the Swansea.com stadium? Yeah. We will be there tomorrow for that 3 o'clock kickoff, and we'll be in about in 24 hours time, we will be there delivering the team news. So we will see you then. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.